This program is brought to you by Emory University.
If I may have your attention, please. We're about ready to start the formal program. I hope you've enjoyed your lunch. It's always a favorite of mine. We were just talking about Bojanic as being a favorite restaurant, so I didn't mean to give an advertisement, but I'm happy to because it's true. My name is Philip Wainwright. I'm the Vice Provost for Global Strategy and Initiatives, and it's an honor to be here today. This is one of the key events that we've organized as part of Emory's India Week. This India Week is the successor to what was known as the India Summit, which served to highlight various aspects of India, Emory's engagement with India, and also bring in distinguished visitors to speak on relevant topics. We tried something a little different this year, which we hope engaged a broader population at Emory, including many more students, where there's a lot of energy. This year, in the incoming first-year class in Emory College, Indian students for the first time were the second largest group. Overall, Indian students are the third largest group at Emory, and there are, at least it's very hard to get statistics on this, but the largest number of faculty name India as a country they're engaged with above all others at Emory. So Emory has significant engagement with India. And I hope that you've either attended some of the other events of India Week, and also tomorrow night we have a very special event with Vikas Swarup, who authored the book which was the basis for the movie Slumdog Millionaire. So there's going to be a viewing of the movie and a lecture and reception tomorrow night. We're very excited about that. So thank you for being here. We're really very privileged here at Emory to have Jagdish Sheth on the faculty as the Charles Kelstadt Professor of Marketing in the Goizueta School of Business. And as I was preparing to introduce him today, it made me really proud to be at Emory. I'm an Emory alum, and I've worked at Emory for a long time. But to realize that the kind and supportive man who I have the privilege to work with on things to do with India and on internationalization at Emory in general is, in fact, a superstar. Looking at his bio and his resume, he's authored over 300 articles, numerous books on important and timely topics. I'm not going to go really down the list right now because we want to hear him speak. But he's also received some of the highest awards in his field that one can have over a significant period of time. We're really very fortunate to have Jag Sheth amongst us here at Emory and to benefit from what he brings to the community. And today, we get to benefit from his expertise on a topic of great importance to us and importance to India in the current day. So without further ado, I'd like to invite Jag Sheth to the lectern. Thank you.
Well, I need to lower this, right? There is a height difference between Philip and I, and therefore we never see eye to eye, okay? It's a typical joke about short people, you know. And that reminds me, I am standing, just for that information for the people in the back, right? So I wanted to talk about my name first, about 1 minute, short introduction. Please call me Jag, like in Jaguar. And ever since that association, I've been dreaming of owning a Jaguar with a license plate, Jag's Jag. And I've been encouraging both our City of Atlanta mayor and definitely the governor's office to make sure that Jaguar headquarters here in Atlanta, okay? And it might happen, you never know. It is ultimately owned by Tata Motors, and Tata Motors might realize that Atlanta is probably the most strategic city in the globalizing architecture. My own view is that 8 to 10 large Indian enterprises should all hub in one city with their multiple businesses rather than divide each of their businesses into Dallas, for example, or New York, New Jersey, or Chicago, sometimes Los Angeles. All hub here because then there is a whole ecosystem and a clout that they command, both economic and political clout from the city, and it's selling. Surprisingly, Atlanta is very affordable, very livable, has 4 major universities because parents look for their children's education. And I think we have everything going. We have all the ingredients to make this into a great, exciting city, but we don't have a recipe yet. That's the whole point. So we need to figure out how to do it right. This has been a city waiting in the wings to become truly a global city since I came, at least in 1991, and I think the opportunity has come. The reason I'm saying is that India has been waiting in the wings to be a major manufacturing hub of the world. And the time has come now. Let me make 2, 3 observational comments before I get into the presentation. The first comment is that this initiative by the Indian government will be as transformative as the initiative right after independence India did to invest in engineering and medicine, and therefore established institutions that's in the field of education as a way of uplifting the economy from a traditional commodities, agriculturally driven economy to more an industrial society. And you know today that the graduates of those universities called IITs, Indian Institute of Technology, are absolutely world-class because the admission standards are so high. And most of them have come to this country, most of them in this country, mostly in Silicon Valley, and they've become very successful either corporate executives or they've become excellent entrepreneurs with multi-billion dollars of wealth created for themselves. So there's something that government invested, had a vision about what to do in the future to shift India from a typical agricultural-based colony, and it had everything going right for it because the British had put a system in place for civil society, had laws, has accounting rules, had even created an organization to attract the best and the brightest into the government services, what is known as the Indian Administrative Services or Civil Services, which was after British model. Everything was there, and it worked very well. Today, this initiative is in the same category with a magnitude of maybe 100 times more. So I take this initiative very seriously as how it might transform Indian economy forever. I will make another analog here. This is very similar to, surprisingly, President Lincoln, after Civil War, decided with a policy document, he was able to go through the legislative process, despite all of the difficulties of getting anything done together, and transform this economy from an agriculturally based economy to what we know today as the largest industrial power in the world. So if US could do it at that time, about 100 years ago, if China could do it, in fact, 30, 40 years ago, there's nothing that says India cannot do it. Just keep that comment in mind. There are people who are always skeptical because India has had several opportunities. These are missed opportunities. And typical arguments would be in all the newspapers as well as debates that what about corruption? What about bureaucracy? What about lack of governance? Answer is yes, that's all there as they were in this country 100 years ago, please. But think about a country that was totally ideologically opposite, high degree of corruption, lack of infrastructure, which is what argument people make, and huge bureaucracy called China. China was made into a manufacturing power, not by the Chinese themselves, but by the rest of the world. And it's the same message here. If China could transform itself from being a completely communist country with no rights to private property, for example, and become one of the best capitalistic nations. India is more than halfway through anyhow because of the British Commonwealth systems in place toward commerce and toward industry. So I do believe that this is very viable. This is not like a dream or a mirage, but it's a real stuff. So if you have a corruption, if you have a lack of infrastructure, and if you have, in fact, huge bureaucracy, what does it take to make it despite those obstacles? As China has shown, all it takes is leadership. And to me, leadership is the missing ingredient, which is now coming into focus into the Indian politics. So this initiative is led by the newly elected Prime Minister, who seems to be committed to this initiative for a long period of time. And my view is that leadership is all about architecting the future. Leadership is all about imagining the future and then igniting the minds of everybody to actually deliver that future. Leaders don't deliver, it's the followers who deliver the vision, which is important. To me, it is as difficult as President Kennedy's vision, because we were so behind the Soviets in the space program that he would like to see a man on the moon in less than 1 decade, which was impossible if you watch all the documentaries to say how difficult that vision was, but it was executed because there was a willpower. And it was not President Kennedy who did it because, unfortunately, he was assassinated, but the society or the engineers in this case took the role to say it's a mission-driven approach and we will get it done. So those are the things I wanted to preface before I show the architecture. I've chosen the title, Make in India, which is the slogan, which is the phrase to capture the imagination. But I have a subtitle called, Will India Make It? It's a typical debate, right? So I wanted to play on the words. I'm not an English major, please, okay? I'm a business major and business professor, so hopefully this title will be okay. So this is the mission of the Make in India. It has 5 major objectives. It's a major national program. Very deliberate words are used. It's not a regional or a state-by-state program. It's designed to facilitate investment, attract investment, foster innovation, which is a very key objective, enhance skill development, protect intellectual property right, build best-in-class manufacturing infrastructure. And they have a slogan, which I said is really a slogan, and they have a message: there has never been a better time to make in India, which is a very important slogan as a catch-all. Out of the 5 objectives, I believe it will probably achieve only 1 or 2. It will deliver the manufacturing vision. The nation went from agriculture to services economy without going through the typical evolution of a nation into manufacturing, which increases the infrastructure investment, and then ultimately you go into the services economy, as China is doing right now. So let's just look at this thing. My second slide is that this is strike number 3. At this time, will India have a home run or will be struck out? The first major strike was in the 50s, where India decided not to embrace manufacturing outsourcing, which the Allies, after World War II, wanted to outsource. Instead, it went to Taiwan. It went to Korea after the Korean War, essentially. Japan for a while. Remember made in Japan products we used to buy in this country? We used to buy made in Taiwan, made in Korea. It's all made in China today. India missed that boat. For whatever reason, you cannot simply go back and rationalize. It may be the right reasons for the leaders at that time because of the just got the independence. You have anti-colonial feelings, for example. You had a major partition of the nation decided by others than by you in some fashion. And you have all this long history of struggle for independence. And you may not trust, therefore, the ex-colonial powers. I can rationalize it. But whatever reason, if India had embraced manufacturing in the 50s, there would be no Taiwan today, probably no Japan today, definitely no China today. Think about that. Just that one decision whoever made all the difference, which is interesting. Second biggest strike arose in the 70s when India, due to the whole hostility on the borders, had to have a strategic alignment, a military partnership, and ended up choosing Soviet Union, which was a disaster for at least 25 years or a quarter of a century. So it delayed its destiny that is likely to happen. And if you believe in the Hindu philosophy of destiny, I just published an autobiography of mine last year, and the title was The Accidental Scholar. I was supposed to be a shopkeeper, less than high school educated, running a little shop, but instead I became an academic, which is the best thing that ever happened to me. But I was making this book ceremony comment, and there was a person in the audience. They're all intellectual professors, and he simply said, "Professor, I don't agree with your title." There is nothing in Indian tradition or Hindu tradition that is accidental. Everything is predestined for you. You may not know it. And I was surprised because I never thought from that viewpoint when I had the title chosen, which is interesting. I think same thing around here. If you believe in the destiny theory or the theology of Indian religions, then clearly this is the time where it might happen. So strike three or home run. We have fully loaded bases, which means we have all the capabilities in the nation from a resource capability, especially human capital capability. The question is, who will be at the bat, and will that person be able to swing in the right way, knowing that there are alternatives in the world by and large? I'm optimistic at the same time, so I will show you how and why this is likely to happen. The main reason is that I believe gods are just blessing India. It's very interesting, and I'll talk about why. First major is that it's all about China. China actually will itself outsource manufacturing. Think about that. And if India plays its card right, rather than manufacturing outsourcing by Chinese corporations or made in China by American, European corporations, rather than doing it in Vietnam or in Thailand or in Africa, for that matter, which is where they are thinking about, they can do it in India. So one of the biggest players who will make India would be China out of nowhere, which is almost a non-traditional thinking. We think it's the Western world who will make India's future about manufacturing. I'm not so sure it'll be just the Western world. I think it'll be all the world, both the South nations, as we call them, emerging economies, and the North nations. World wants to de-risk its total dependence on China. Today, you cannot get any product made except in China. And that supply chain, Chinese government can decide unilaterally to shut it down, to selectively direct some other place. And if you are a company dependent upon products being sourced in China, you are at a loss. And you can't take that economic loss. So every major business enterprise would like to de-risk. The question is, where is the alternative? And the alternative now, India looks like a very attractive alternative because of the scale, the size, et cetera, et cetera. It is not for making products for India market. It is just like what we have, an American company making products in China for the American market, which is a very key different architecture. We have a definitely aging Europe, but surprisingly, we have aging Asia. Japan is one of the oldest nations in the world, immediately followed by Korea, and in less than 15, 20 years, China will be just like Japan, an aging, affluent nation. And when you have the aging come in play, the economy shifts by definition from products to services. Healthcare is a service industry. Wealth preservation is a service industry. Recreation is a service industry. So Chinese economy will become more and more services-driven economy if you are attracted by Chinese economy as opposed to a product-driven economy, which also allows the shift toward India. appreciating dollar, and dollar has a record appreciation right now compared to the euro, for example, favors India because India, which was pegged at 40 rupees per dollar only about 5 years ago, is now down to 62 rupees roughly, or 60 rupees, which makes very attractive investment because the world calculates everything in a dollar-based pricing, whether it's an investment or a trade, and therefore India becomes very attractive. Right now, it's a cheap buy or cheap investment. Competing nations, surprisingly, as I said, gods are blessing. Competing nations are in political gridlocks. Brazil is in a gridlock. Russia is in a mess right now, which could compete in some places. So is Vietnam. So is Thailand. And I can go on naming. Argentina. They're all suppliers to the Western economies. So the political instability, whether it's ideologically driven or theology driven, I don't mind, it is irrelevant, governments are paralyzed. And therefore, industry does not want to invest in them or even do trade with them because whole supply chain can be shut down by some incident taking place. There's a very key area that I'm researching quite a lot. The Bretton Woods was created, as you know, after the World War II phenomenon, actually, the Great Depression area. And we created two world-class institutions, International Monetary Fund and World Bank. The emerging economies have decided that it controls too much of their future. So instead, you have two new institutions created, which are very viable. One, of course, is the Brics Development Bank, Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, combining together to create a bank which will be investing into emerging economy for infrastructure capital that you need. But equally strategic institute is called AIIM, Asian Infrastructure Investment. I don't know what M stands for what, but it's very interesting, right? Led by China. And you saw this week earlier, UK decided to align on that side despite American objections. Germany has done the same now. France has done the same, and Italy has done the same. So the power has already shifted away from World Bank and away from International Monetary Fund. And therefore, this is the era where gods will be blessing India, interestingly. There's a sharp drop in oil prices, which is a major drain on the imports, pretty much. And therefore, the reserves that you need to back up your currency and all the transactions and the working capital that you need for trade, et cetera, probably would be a lot more possible now. And surprisingly, India is one of the largest consumer markets in the world. I did research on cellular telephone in this country around 84, 85, when we were commercializing it as an advisor to the Bell system and the government. Nobody imagined at that time. I remember the numbers from consultants. We thought the total demand for cellular telephone by year 2000 will be about 958,000 subscribers. We were off by a few billion, right? The largest cell phone markets are China and India. Largest internet market is China and India. Largest apps like WhatsApp and those kinds are China and India. So in this new digital world, this new consumer economy is coming to a way which is so interesting, which says that if you invest there for whatever reason to make your products, down the road there might be even an opportunity for the domestic market, surprisingly. Main point I'm making is that it is as much non-Indians who will decide the destiny of India as Indians will decide. I think Indian alone enterprises or Indian alone leaders will be able to do it. It'll be a collective effort. There's a little saying I have put in the bottom. It's a Gujarati saying. I come from the state of Gujarat. And we basically say, Jare Lakshmi aave tamne chanlo karwa. Bathroom ma na jado, face ne wash karwa mate. So when the goddess Lakshmi, which is one of the goddesses of India, comes to bless you and wants to put a little tikka to bless you as a mind, don't go to say, let me wash my face, I'm dirty. Doesn't matter whether you are dirty or not, take the blessings now. That means don't worry about whether you have refined your laws. You know what I'm saying? It's a very opportunistic behavior and just do it kind of a notion. This is not the time where you say, this is search, then aim, and then fire, right? This is basically fire, fire, fire. Something will happen, okay? Who cares kind of a notion. So I would not go into the details of this chart. It took a lot of time for me to prepare this. There are 25 manufacturing sectors that government has identified. And what I did was to put a 2x2 matrix, which I love to do, production and consumption. And you find that the agriculture is domestic produced, domestic consumed industry primarily. Railways is another big one. Railway alone will almost cross $1 trillion worth of investments as they are modernized. It's the largest railway for passenger in the world anyhow, and still having a huge demand for enormous improvement as an infrastructure, space, hospitality. At the top is a very important one where it's a domestic consumption, but most of it is imported, and that will be the trigger point. The largest way Make in India strategy will work would be to focus on defense, where India has the capability to jointly produce weapons. I have even advocated some time ago that F-16 program, which is obsolete by 2 generations in America, why should it be housed in Fort Worth, Texas? It can be easily outsourced in Bangalore. It has at least $50 billion of value still left in terms of downstreaming services activities. It can be done very well from this country, but India can deliver as a joint partner, and it's still a very viable aircraft for a fighter. So defense does not include aircraft alone. You include submarines, for example. You include carriers, include all the weapons of what we know about in the defense industry. Our second one, very big one, is electronics, hardware. India does not make any. And this, again, is about $1 trillion industry for India because of that consumer economy that I talked about. And the third one is aviation. Just like China is one of the largest aircraft market for aviation, commercial aviation. Indonesia is one of the big markets because of the island economy. India is a very large market because people are shifting from just railways, not to automobiles as much as to flying. They may bypass that generation from railways to cars to flying, as we have done. They can go in, interestingly. If you look at the lower right box, that's very interesting. India is the second largest textile producer. It is one industry that China will probably decide not to invest. Japanese were the largest textile makers. Only 25, 30 years ago, decided to exit for using their resources for better purposes, kind of a notion, which is interesting. So we think textile will be a big, big export-driven market. So will be IT services. It's about $130 billion right now. In about 4 or 5 years, we'll easily cross $500 billion, all export primarily. It's a very large sector, succeeded very well. It has built positive reputation and the image about India. I remember when I used to travel earlier, people used to presume when I came back, the customs immigration people would not even ask you that question. How long have you been away from the country and what do you do? You know, those are screening questions. They always asked me, are you a diamond merchant? I don't know. I must look like a diamond merchant, right? In Europe, I would get no respect in the 68. I did machine tool industry research project for India's machine tools for export, for European markets, and they simply don't respect you. Now I go to Germany, in Berlin, and the person who takes my luggage upstairs to my room says, smiling, you must be a software engineer, you know? Why not? Whatever it is, it's very interesting to watch. So there's a bunch of industries. Auto components is very key. The last box upper right is the one that government hasn't thought about. Countries make products. Chinese or Japanese make products, that's a Sony brand, not for Japan market or for China market, but for American market. So your manufacturing is one place, consumption is a different place, but you are the catalyst. So I think in Asia, because of the global hub shift that is taking place, India will become a manufacturing destination, as China has been, for world consumption and world production being shifted over there. So I'm very optimistic about this thing. So this is a quote. I just want to take 5-10 more minutes and then have Q&A. This just came very recently. Economic Times reported Christine Lagarde, who is the head of IMF, is visiting India. She might be still in India. And this is her comment. India has an opportunity to become one of the world's most dynamic economies. My message will be, what will be your message to the nation? Seize it. Certainly the numbers are in India's side. The revised GDP data suggest a strong pace of economic activity, with growth likely to reach more than 7% in 2014-15. Inflation has fallen to around 5%, had gone out of control at one time last year. Current account deficit, which is the trade balance, balance of payments, current account deficit has shrunk, and the rupee has been stable since 2013, late 2013. The sharp drop in oil prices, too, is lending a hand. Rest of the world wants India to become a manufacturing hub. It's just like that goddess Lakshmi coming to bless you. You could have simply say, okay, let me take advantage of that blessing kind of a thing. So what will it take? This is my last slide, and I'll basically tell you. My first message is that we need to leverage the largest presence of India worldwide is its diplomatic corps. They're everywhere, by definition. And who said diplomats have to deal with political aspects? Today's diplomats in the world are all trade ambassadors. So can we leverage a large force out there and make them into great marketers? In order to become marketers, you get to know the product yourself, right? You can't sell a product unless you know the product, you have the passion about the product. So how do we make ambassadors marketers? I mean, that can be turned on in 3 months. It's that simple. Okay? So you have a huge existing infrastructure, an ecosystem to make this into really, really a strong presentation, strong, in fact, inviting the delegations, et cetera, et cetera. We recommended that for machine tool industry in the 68, and it worked like a charm. So it's very doable. Second, make Indian diplomats or marketers. The second point is invite China to make in India. And this is where the debate arises, because there is a huge asymmetry of trust. Most Chinese love Indians. It's interesting. Most Indians don't trust Chinese. From taxi driver to the top economic advisors to the leaders, just don't trust. I've never seen such asymmetry between two nations. Both nations won't be trusting each other, India, Pakistan, kind of stuff. But this is fascinating. So it's correct. It's from 1962. People still remember. People remember after they have died because of the reincarnation theory we believe in, right? Okay? Very interestingly. But we have done business with other people who were more oppressive to us. We have done that. Okay? We have done business with people who were not on our side politically, Pakistan, India issues, where the partners were very different. If we can change our mind about those, why can't we change mind about China? I think it's all perception, more so, and somebody has to intervene and educate. The world will depend on China whether we like it or not. Despite all of the negativism that is given in the Western press, Chinese will continue their journey as a major destination in the world. And therefore, they are saying we need to get away from Western institutions and create our own institutions, like the Asia Investment Infrastructure Bank, for example. Okay? It's very interesting to watch that whole change. So don't underestimate the rise of China and its global impact. If you don't participate, it's the largest market in the world for many markets. It is the largest sourcing destination. It has very talented people, and therefore you can't ignore it. Just like America is one of the largest sourcing destinations. More we buy from America than any other nation, not export, but domestically raw materials. Largest, in fact, market in the world, and we have large talented people. You cannot ignore US, and therefore you cannot ignore China in the same breath. So I have this institute called India-China-America Institute. It's the trilateral relationship that will be very key, because the three largest nations in terms of resources, markets, and all the stuff are India, China, and America. Okay? So encourage Japan and Korea, which are very good partners for China right now. Massive investment is already there. to actually make things in India and export it to the rest of the world, including China. Remember, Sony sells very well in China. Who said they have to make that product in China? So these are the, Toyota does very well in China. Who says Toyota has to be made in China? Are you with me? So it's very possible that these large manufacturers can shift their capacity pretty strong very quickly, so they can do it, okay? Align with the US primarily for defense. There's no way you can align with China for defense, for example. Russia has been the traditional ally. So to me, our alignment with the US is going to be primarily military defense engagement. And then it might have some political and economic consequences. China's engagement will be more economic first, political second, and militarily last is the way I anticipate. Actively participate in those two institutions, Brics. The first head of the Brics bank itself will be an Indian because of the agreement they signed. I think it was in Brazil where they hosted the event last year. And the other one is the AIIM, as I mentioned to you. I strongly believe in computerization. The best way to reduce corruption is computerization, nothing else. So if you computerize the bureaucracy and the governance, everything works smoothly. As we have seen, now that you can get your visa on arrival, remember how long it used to take to get your visa for India? It's very fascinating, especially you have a very close relative, like aging parents who are dying. You can't visit them because you don't have the right visa for whatever reason. Today you can go online and you can get a visa on arrival. All it took was somebody's decision to do it, and they executed. Nice thing about India is that they have the digital capability, especially on a mobile platforms, enterprise platforms, so they can bring about this change very quickly in bureaucracy by just computerization. I've been advocating this for quite some time. Invest in Digital India. It's a massive initiative. Indians will be more literate in digital technology than in English reading and writing. And to me, that is the next language. The digital language is more universal, more powerful than English language or any other language, and it's already happening pretty much. So that's another major initiative. I'm working on that one with the government. I think it's very interesting. And the last one is improve ease of doing business. There are two parts. The second part is reduce cost of doing business. India is expensive. It's not just takes a long time, but there are taxes after taxes. One of the key events taking place from next year is that they're going to have this goods and services tax, GST. That will rationalize quite a lot of inefficiency and the leakage that takes place typically, where corruption and the bribes come in from the bureaucracy will be gone. So we think GIS will be a key, GST will be a key platform, and putting 2014 national backbone, wireless technology will allow reaching any place in the rural parts of the world, of India. And therefore, one can put manufacturing any place. I'll just stop with that one last comment. A great executive from Atlanta, she headed up Coca-Cola, went back to India to head up Britannia Biscuit. Some of us know her, Vinita Bali. She's a good friend. One day she calls me up on her cell phone with tremendous excitement. She's saying, Dr. Sheth, almost like a little girl. Do you know where am I calling you from? I'm in some remote part where they make, the wheat and the flour and all the stuff. Sitting in the back of the car with a laptop, and I'm calling you from that. This was unthinkable 10 years before. So this rural-urban divide is getting very short with digital technology. It is the great equalizer, more so than any tax policy, more so any social programs, more so than the great society. The great equalizer is the digital technology. So I'm very fond of that one. It'll reduce the cost, ease of doing business, and as it becomes more universal in India, as it has happened in China, the parallels are very interesting. So quickly, there is no better time than now to execute Make in India initiative. India cannot afford to miss this opportunity as it did twice before. Focus on defense, electronics, and aviation for import substitution. Focus on IT services, auto components, and textiles for exports, which also reduces, increases the reserves. And the reserves must be easily crossing 1 trillion. If China can accumulate 4 or 5 trillion in reserves in less than 25, 30 years, India can easily achieve 1 to 2 trillions in 5 years. It's very possible numerically by and large. Focus on agriculture, very key sector. Railways, space and infrastructure, which includes construction, power and logistics for domestic growth. Gods are blessing India. May the force be with you, okay? Thank you very much.
The preceding program is copyrighted by Emory University.